7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, take.
Are you ready?
Arizona's best.
You think you can tell us what to do?
It's our pleasure to be here.
You think you can tell us what to wear?
A big deal for us.
You think that you're better?
Go on, get!
Well, you better get ready.
We also try to find great national talent.
Bow to the masters. Yeah! Break it down! Yeah! Yeah! Yeah, yeah, yeah! Degenerate into something cool. We just got tired of doing what you told us to do. That's a break, boy. Yeah! That's a break, little man. Yeah! Break it down!
We are the Clue. We are the Clue.
You think you can tell me what to do?
So fuck him.
You know who you're talking to?
Little bitch, I'm a god.
But you better get used to the way the ball bounces. Yeah! What you got, it measures in ounces. But that's a break, boy. Yeah, that's a break, little man. Break it down.
We are the Clue. We are the Clue.
Think you're a big man?
Oh, wow. It's really jogging my memory here.
But treat you like you're a little man.
Hey, dude, you want to suck my dick? Is that your problem?
Don't tell me what it's like to be half a man. It must break your heart to see what I am, but that's a break, boy. Yeah! That's a break, little man. Break it down.
We are the Clue. We are the Clue.
You think you can tell me what to do?
Ah, yes! Back in the game. What up, Clunatics?
Welcome back to our third episode of the podcast. This is Behind the Cluesic.
The big deal, episode 3, the one we've been waiting, 1, 2, 3 years? Oh my gosh, it's been way too long. I have to apologize. We were supposed to do this, I think, back in February, but unfortunately, Shotgun Love Studios was under repair. But the good news is we have repaired the studio, and we're back with the one and only Sergio Cardenas.
Yes, we have a very special guest. He was the lead guitarist, co-songwriter, and backup vocals for The Clue.
Yay.
What's up,
Sergio,
dude?
why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me, guys. This is pretty funny. I never thought something like this would happen. So I'm glad that you guys are keeping the Clue alive.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I was one of the founders of the Clue. I knew Jared from the very beginning, and all of the other guys in the band, and we just started the band just like anyone else who wants to be in a band. We love to play music, and that's what it was all about.
Why don't we back it up a little bit and start with how you first got into making music?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I kind of had a dual career path. It's like I always wanted to be a rock star, but then I also loved art and other things, film and all of that, and that's what I'm involved in now.
Nice.
So I produce commercials and do a lot of things in the entertainment business. And, I still love music, and I still, play now and then, but right out of college, I wanted to be the rock star, so that's where the whole Clue thing came in. But it's all good. I met Jared back in 1980.
Wow.
2 maybe.
I'm 50 fucking years old.
And when I met him, it was because I was in this top 40 band, or this, I wouldn't even call it top 40 band, it's just this cover band. And we were looking for a vocalist. And the very first thing that he did when he came in is he brought in his keyboard, and I think the thing fell off the stand a couple times. He had this really janky stand. And the first song we played together was Spirit of the Radio.
Wow.
And we hired him because I already had a bass player and a drummer and was myself. So we hired him because he could sing like Geddy Lee and he could play the keyboards. And that was the beginning of the. It wasn't even called the Clue back then. I forget what we were called.
I'm not going to say the band's name.
But that was the beginning of me playing with Jared.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another. We played a lot of shows. I actually left the band for about a year and a half because I wanted to finish up school, and I had I couldn't fit the band into my schedule, and so once I graduated, I hooked up with Jared again, and they were playing all these top 40 clubs, and they had a guitar player that they had me come in and replace. And from then, we started writing like original music.
Wow. Okay.
So that was kind of the very first thing. We just started recording in studios and around Orange County. That's where the band was based. And we just started kind of doing our own thing.
That's crazy because I know once because the first thing I thought of when this was still really unknown.
Its infancy stages.
Yeah, obviously it was when we had a guy who had messaged the commissioner, and he said, "Hey, I can't tell you how I got these tracks, but I have this 7-inch, and I'm going to send you." It was Radio, Video, and Stay the Night with Me, and
Right.
that blew us away because up until then, for like 6 or 7 months, it had only been the 3 videos on YouTube that Joel Samuel put out.
Right.
And it was right after that I went on eBay and I was like, I'll give it a shot. Like, what are the odds that I'm going to find it? And sure enough, it was there, and I bought it.
Now we have 3 of them.
I don't know how you found that 45, but like I have maybe 4 copies of that.
Dude, I bought 2 more.
The way I found out about it was because my sister, calls me. She said, "There's some guy on Facebook that has your 45."
One blast from the past. Don't hurt nobody.
And I guess it was you.
So
Yeah.
that was the first post that you that caught your eye?
Yeah, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And so how that happened was we started writing some original music, and we had maybe, maybe like 5 songs at the time. And there was this one guy that approached us at this club. There used to be this club at it was kind of like an 80s club in Fullerton out here in Orange County.
Okay.
And, he was checking it out, and he had started a small record label. It was called Circle Orange.
Yeah.
So he approached us with wanting to, sign us for a record deal. And at the time, we were like, wow, man, we're getting signed.
Right.
And
This
it was
is
a
it.
dude that was working out of his, his bedroom.
Wow.
But so he paid for the recordings, and we went into the studio, and I think we played each track maybe 3 times at the most, and that was it. And he started distributing the stuff throughout the country, and it was funny to get a lot of feedback from different parts of the country. Some people liked it, some people thought it sucked, and some people had it like it was on their top 10 list. And but it was fun, and that was really the only thing we did with that record label, and but that kind of was the genesis for us to really want to do it seriously. And
Sure, that got you thinking, hey, we could really make something out of this.
Yeah, and we were playing a lot of clubs, and we were getting a lot of recognition, and we were selling out all the shows. And it was in the 80s was the time. I mean, like the pink pants that I wear and Jerry spandex and all that shit.
Oh yeah,
that was it.
Slammed out to the fucking max.
Oh well, dude, one of my favorite bands is Iron Maiden, and Bruce Dickinson, the lead singer, wore spandex pants all the time.
Yeah,
and it's like he, and they even, even they talk about it like. Yeah, there were some fashion faux pas, but it's not really what it was about. The music was the most important thing. The fashion, you had
funny.
to.
I grew up in high school. I went to high school with the guys in Slayer.
Oh, nice.
And I knew all of those guys, Kerry King and David Lombardo, the original drummer. And in fact, when I was in a band in high school, David Lombardo, I think he worked like the light board for us one time. It was like he did the light show for us.
That is beyond cool.
And I remember going to a party. It was like just a backyard party that Slayer was playing, and everybody's waiting around for them to start. And David wasn't there, and so it got really late. They decided they were going to go on. They started playing without a drummer. And I guess David's mom wouldn't let him go to the party, like got in trouble, didn't take out the trash or something. And wouldn't let him out. So, you know, the band played without a drummer, and I think a lot of people just kind of like sat in and played. But, yeah, there were a lot of like bands that came out of the area that I grew up in, which was pretty funny.
Right, absolutely. Well, the 80s, you know, and I was talking about this with the Clumissioner, too. I felt like the early 80s was a turning point in music in America because you had I felt like half of it was very still into the disco era and trying to transition into pop music or top 40 music. And the other half was kind of revolting against that, which is when you had the beginning of like, you know, American hardcore bands like hardcore punk rock, like Bad Brains and
Right.
DK and bands like that who were Black Flag, who were trying to break away from that. And, you know, they're two very different genres, obviously. And, you know, I felt like that was, you know, a big turning point in music was the 70s going into the 80s.
Yeah, and, you know, that is interesting because there was nothing like hanging out on the Sunset Strip during the times where both of those genres were I guess, equally present, the hair band genre and then like the punk and new wave.
Right.
And the Strip was the place to be, man. It was crazy. But then there was a whole movement out in Orange County where I lived in L.A. and I hung out in like Hollywood and did all those clubs, but I also hung out in Orange County because that's where like Jared was from and some of the other guys. So we used to play, you know, out in all of those clubs as well. And like bands like No Doubt were out there. We used to rehearse at the same studios that they did.
Nice.
And TSOL and Social Distortion and all of these bands that were coming up at that time. There was a big movement, you know, and so it was pretty cool. And hanging out on the Strip and checking out like Guns N' Roses before they got signed and you know, and Bullet Boys and all of these other hair bands that were just big. It was. There's nothing like that now.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that, man. It's just like the whole scene has changed. It's kind of sad because that was it was a spectacle.
I'm a spectacle.
You had to kind of experience.
That's what it's supposed to
really
be,
kind
I
of
feel
believe it.
like, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Well, because we know, so I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name. He sent us a message through our Clue page, and he had sent us a photograph that we're going to actually put into this podcast. And
You're talking about Hotbox?
yeah. Well, no, before Hotbox, he was like, I bet you I'm the only one who has one of these.
Oh,
Man, what picture is that?
It's a picture. Yeah, well, dude, it's definitely from the early stages of the Clue.
You're talking about the old, okay. 'Cause
Yeah.
we have some questions about this picture. There's a girl in it, and there's
like
other people that were not in the videos.
Yeah, because up until the videos, like the only members of the Clue that we knew were the ones who were
In the video.
yeah in the Joe Samuel presentations on YouTube.
Right.
So when he sent that to us, I was like, geez, this goes even farther back than the 7-inch recordings. So
Right.
was that like the original lineup?
Of the Clue?
Yeah.
Man, I'm trying to remember. I'll have to look at the picture in order to like remember what the hell you're talking about.
It definitely had you and Jared. There was a blonde female, and
Oh, I don't even think that was a Clue. Oh, now I know who you're talking about. His name is Noah.
yes, Noah Hicks.
All right.
Noah
yeah,
Hicks,
it was this girl that I used to date way back in the 80s, and she was a singer, and maybe at the very beginning when the Clue was a top 40 band, she used to play because we also used to play like And we played some crazy shows. We would play like weddings and like proms.
Right? That's awesome.
Man.
And I remember this one prom that we played way out in, I don't know, man, it was the middle of nowhere. And Jared was on mushrooms.
I was just mostly, on drugs.
And I remember it because he was also playing keyboards, and he used to, carry the lead vocals for all the guy tunes. And the dude dumped his like equipment bag with all the chords, and he was just like staring at the whole thing and starting to panic. And he couldn't set up his equipment, so I had to like help him kind of set it up. And I just remember it got out of control. All the kids started dancing on the tables and started like turning things over. And
That's what I imagine of the Clue playing a prom. I wish they would have played mine.
It was kind of cool. It was obviously those kids had nothing better to do, so it was nice to give them a release.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because there was there was definitely a couple of people in there where because there's I can't say for sure, but there looked like
another dude in there, another guy in there. Probably his name is Roy.
Okay, was that the black dude or was it the?
There's another guy in there, and he played the sax. And,
okay.
In fact, that song that I sent you guys, "Times Are Changing."
Oh, yeah.
He's the dude that was playing the sax on that.
Nice.
And he was really good friends with Jared, and Roy and his brother acted as our kind of booking agent managers when we were playing like all of these different top 40 gigs.
Okay.
So that's who it probably was.
That's crazy. Do you?
Yeah.
That's a funny thing is because that really speaks to the diversity of the band and how much, because you've sent us a lot of recordings, and man, it's just like I can't, some bands, even professional bands, some of their songs are just not that good, and I have a hard time getting into them. There isn't one Clue track that I've heard so far that isn't good. So I mean, really, and they're all sorts of different. I mean, there's but.
Even though they do seem to focus on the same thing, love.
Well, that's that's Jared for you. So But no, look, honestly, it's like we were in the studio, and I wish I had some of the other recordings, but everything ended up on cassette tape. So most of the stuff hasn't survived, but we were in the studio all the time. I mean, we were recording, constantly, and Jared and I were writing, constantly, and we would always have new songs, and so it was cool. It was a cool time. It was a lot harder than it is now. I mean, I wish I had Pro Tools or even Garage back then.
Easily.
It was kind of a pain in the ass. We'd have to go to an actual studio.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you guys signed a contract with Circle Orange. Was the only record that they produced, was that the radio video promo?
That was it, man. That was it. And in fact, I don't know what happened to the dude. He just like disappeared. And but I mean, we whatever we signed, we didn't know. We were kids, and we just went on and continued to play, and we started getting a lot of interest from other people, but the band kind of evolved, and I mean, all of my influences really are range from everything from like heavy metal to funk to jazz to just anything that I liked. I really didn't discriminate against any type of music.
I love that because that's kind of how I feel about music. I like a little bit of
when I first,
everything.
Started hanging out with Jared, it was funny because he wasn't really into the funk and everything that soul and everything that I was into, and like kind of introduced him to that genre, and he was more into Rush and just the typical kind of hard rock stuff at the time, classic rock, I'll say, at the time.
Yeah.
But
what we call classic rock now. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, whatever I felt sounded good, regardless of what it was, it didn't matter to me, and And that's kind of the way I feel now about music as well. It's just like, if it's good, I like it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's another thing too is, you know, at times Jared would get defensive and totally understandable when, you know, he says somebody messages him to play the Clue. He's taking that as an insult.
No, you want me to play the Clue, a band I was in the 80s.
I think he's like a little bit more apt to welcoming people messaging him saying, "Hey, dude, listen, I love Hed PE, but you really put it down when you were in the Clue." And like, I think he can kind of understand and appreciate compliments like that. But if obviously if you're messaging him like, "Hey, play the Clue,"
This is not the Clue, you fat little faggot.
you know, obviously he's going to take that as an insult. But the guy, I mean, it kind of speaks to his music now. We recently saw him a couple of months ago, and their music has evolved, you know, just like
Let's all wake up to the fact that evolution is a myth.
all other bands. And
Right.
it seems like he is, you know, thankfully he had somebody like you to introduce him to that funky kind of style, because that's kind of how it is now. It's a little bit of reggae, a little
Right.
funk, like hip hop mixed with heavy metal. So, I mean, that's the point that we always tried to make, is it started with the Clue.
Yeah, with
And,
no clue, no head.
yeah. Which is what I usually tell my girlfriend.
Look, I won't take all the yeah, exactly. It's like I won't take all the credit for Jared's influences, but we did spend a whole lot of time together, you know,
Right.
and we yeah, I mean we used to, he and I would sit in the garage and just like write, or we would share tracks because we had a little Tascam 4-track recorder, and he'd record some parts and I would record some parts, and
Yeah, just jam a little.
yeah, or we would just like I would come in with kind of a chorus and a verse and introduce it to the band, and we would work it out in rehearsal, and so it worked a lot of different ways. And look, all the guys in the band also contributed. It wasn't just
Right.
Jared and myself, but everybody else had their contributions to the music. But I'll have to say, a lot of the ideas did come from myself and Jared at the time.
That's awesome. Now, where did you guys tour? Because obviously you guys were getting around. Your music was getting around. And we were always curious where you guys toured, because up until I actually messaged you a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, you had said you'd done a lot of live shows. The only one we obviously know about was the one in Tempe. How far around did you get?
Well, you know, we did a lot of like live local shows with a lot of signed acts. What ended up happening is we were managed during the time of the Clue. We were managed by this agency out in L.A. who, you know, booked a lot of shows at a lot of the clubs out in L.A. at the Strip and some of the OC clubs, primarily everything out in Hollywood. And we, just like, you know, any other band that's young and doesn't know what the hell they're doing, we got ripped off. And, in fact, all my equipment was stolen off the stage of the Roxy Theater.
Ouch.
Because the promoter, who was also our manager, claimed that we owed her money and just took all my gear. And it was like this. I was the guy that I felt was the responsible one in the band. I was the one who like used to pay for all the rehearsals.
I always got that feeling.
Yeah.
used to front the money for the recordings, and used to like make sure that everybody had their ticket money for all the sales, and just booked a lot of the shows, you know. And when that happened, I walked out of the Roxy, out of the venue, because everybody was running late, Jared included. I was like standing out on the sidewalk to see where the hell they were, and I walked back in, and all my gear's gone.
Oh,
And the woman who was representing us, but also promoting the show, was drunk and asking me where the money was, and I didn't have it because the guys weren't there. So, you know, so she took all my stuff and never saw it again. But so, anyways, that evolved into more legitimate representation. We actually met a guy who was a DJ on KNAC radio, Long Paul.
Oh, yeah.
And he also was a DJ on L.U.S. out here in L.A.
Yeah, I'm friends with him on Facebook.
He started working with us and got us hooked up with a lot of producers and got us in front of a lot of different labels and started playing a lot of shows, opening, for different bands. And that's when we got recognized by Warner Brothers, and we did a lot of demo recordings for them, kind of like a development deal along with Warner Brothers. And that was at the time of when it was no longer the Clue, no longer Hotbox. That went into Live Urban Sex Tribe. So it was, for me, it was kind of like a big kind of just continuous road. It's like, oh, okay, now we're not wearing 80s pink pants anymore. Now we're wearing spandex.
Satin fucking suits.
Oh, now we're going to go into the grunge thing. Now, so it was just, for me, it was just like a continual kind of ride.
Right.
Until I stopped collaborating with Jared.
Right. Now, I'm kind of curious, too, because just to get back to when we first found out about the Clue, because I'm pretty sure you've probably listened to the first podcast. And if you guys haven't listened to it yet, seriously, what the trash are you doing listening? You're not allowed to listen to this one. But it would make sense. But we talk about it in the first podcast where one of our Clue members had shown the Clue Missioner the videos that were on YouTube, and they belonged to Joel Samuel, apparently, because he was getting pissed when they were being reported. He was like, because he takes his filming seriously. If you've ever been to his YouTube channel, I mean, he's got and when I say everything, I mean, he's got everything. You got to check this guy's page out. But he takes a lot of pride in the fact that that was presented by him. And it seemed like that was more towards the end of the Clue. Could you elaborate on that show?
Yeah,
how'd you guys...
that happened. Again, we were playing at this club in Orange County, and Joel approached me about playing his show out in Tempe. And so, it sounded pretty exciting. So we loaded up the U-Haul and we went out to Tempe and played his show. And we were actually only supposed to play like one or two songs, but when we got there, we got a pretty good reaction from the crowd, and we played like a full set.
Wow!
Oh yeah, you could tell the crowd was really
I don't even
into
have
it.
the recordings. I wish I had all of the full show.
Dude, same, because those three videos alone were phenomenal, and you could I think that was the only thing that really irked me, was that when I contacted Joel, I asked him, I was like, dude, do you have any more footage from that show? Because not only was the energy amazing, but now that I've heard some of the songs that you've given us, I would die to hear those things live, because
on top of that,
I don't remember what the set list was, but I know that we played like a full show, and I wish I had access to all those to the raw footage, because that'd be cool to kind of check out.
He did say that he believes he has footage. The only issue is with the technology.
It's
that
on
he
an
needs.
ancient
It's
technology.
like a quarter-inch or 1-inch master.
Yeah, absolutely. And
He told us you'd need 3 different machines to transfer it to a more new style.
But I mean, maybe that's something that we could pursue in the future, because that's not only is it important to us, but I mean, I'm sure it's important to you. It's part of your history and it's part of the band history. I mean, I can kind of understand the feeling of nostalgia, and it's kind of nice to look back at something, and appreciate it. And thank God we had those 3 videos. Otherwise, we would have never known about the band.
That's what really drew everyone's attention in the first place, was just seeing these videos and then realizing, wow, these guys were doing this 30 years ago.
And look, man, you guys have milked those videos. I don't understand how you've gotten so many different versions out of that. It's pretty funny.
The remixes?
I commend you guys for doing that, because it's hilarious. And that's the way I look at this whole thing, man. It was part of my past, and I love it. And there's nothing like having that experience. And if you're a performer, and you had an opportunity to play on stage. There's nothing like it, and it's pretty cool.
Right, that had to be a really cool time in your life, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So as cheesy as it was, as you know, if people don't like it, that's cool, that's fine. But for me, it was just fun. It was fun, and it was at the time where that was my, you know, my path and my vision and my dream of doing this. But I always say that I got out of that because maybe I wasn't hungry enough and I wasn't like willing to sleep in a car, you know. So because I did have another career, I was always working and I was making decent money, and I was like, all right, so do I want to continue working or do I want to try to pursue this music thing?
Yeah, do I take the chance or
people?
Right.
So it was. And look, and a lot of artists who make it, that's their path, and that's how they make it because they're passionate and they'll do whatever it takes. But
for sure,
that I'd like sleeping on a mattress, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, we are interested in how the Clue kind of wrapped up and segged.
The transition to Hotbox, L.U.S.T, and Hed. But we first we wanna debut one of the songs you gave us, Psychopathic Lover.
Yeah.
Nobody has this one yet. We've been holding on to it for a second.
That's an exclusive track.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because the thing is the commissioner messaged me and said, "Dude, I'm dying over here," and I was like, "I'm like what?" And he's like, "Psychopathic Lover, the new song Sergio sent us." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I had to go to my Facebook Messenger to check it out. And right off the bat, the war cry, I was like, yes, this is the best band ever. I just felt it right off the bat. And it's how did that track come to be exactly?
Man, you know, I think that was one of the tracks that Jared pretty much came in with that track to rehearsal, and he pretty much had it all programmed. We used to have like this Lindrum. I bought this Lindrum that cost me probably at the time it was like $6,000, man. I
my
money on this stupid thing.
Wow.
And then I had a W30 workstation. So he and I used to share that to write with, and he had it like for the weekend or something like that. And he comes into rehearsal and he's like, "Dude, you got to check this out. Psychopathic Lover." All right, so he pretty much had the drum track done and maybe some of the keyboards, and then I added the guitar, and then we started kind of writing the lyrics. He had some of the lyrics written, so that kind of came together pretty quick.
Yeah,
that was one of the times where, in fact, because the drum track was really just the drum machine. We didn't use our actual drummer for that.
One of your meanest guitar solos on that track.
God, yeah, dude, I was listening to that on the way to the studio today, and I was like, wow, man, that solo blows it away.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to take a break for a second. Enjoy world debut. It's the Clue, Psychopathic Lover. We're live, Shotgun Love Studios in Southfield. It's a Clue.
Yeah! Are you ready? Guaranteed that she was a psychopathic lover. She looked in my direction, these
Psychopathic Lover world debut.
There it is, you guys.
For some white boys playing funk, it's pretty nice.
Episode 3 of The Big Deal Behind the Cluesic. Oh, and by the way, our unofficial sponsor for The Big Deal today is O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Auto Parts.
Special guest Sergio Cardenas from the Clue, lead guitar player, founding member. We were talking about how everything got started with the Clue, how music was back in the day back then. And right before debuting it, we touched on the Live from Tempe live video that started it all, really. So obviously an exciting time in your guys' career. What was there anything that kind of gave you the vibe that the era of the Clue was coming to an end and that you guys were going to be segueing into Hotbox?
Yeah, I think when we started hanging out on the Strip a lot, and that was at the time where all these bands were getting signed. Motley Crue was getting signed, or just gotten signed. Guns N' Roses was still playing the Strip. They weren't signed yet. L.A. Guns, the Bullet Boys, all of these bands that were playing the Strip at the time was a big influence. And so more than me, Jared was really influenced by what the next kind of big thing was, and he had a big influence on the direction of the band. And some of the members were okay with it, and since I was kind of a co-writer with them, I was usually okay with the direction that we were taking with the band. And so when the Clue ended, that's when we got into the whole hair band era, and that's when Hotbox came to be.
Okay, we've seen pictures of Hotbox.
Well, we have a couple songs too.
Yeah.
There are some recordings that were actually pretty good that I'm trying to get my hands on.
Cool.
Producer that recorded some of the tracks. We were recording some demos for a couple labels, and those are. I hope they're not lost. But
right.
That'd be really
the only
cool.
thing that I have is I think I sent you one of the tracks, "Broken Hearts."
Yes.
That song's from like '89.
I love it.
Kind of the big power ballad.
Yep.
Yeah, and but unfortunately, I don't have a better recording than that. But that kind of went into that transition. We transitioned away from the Clue and into more of like this hair band, funky type of thing. It started kind of introducing the funk into some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And that was right at that time where the whole hairband thing was happening.
Now, was it musical differences that led to you guys parting ways with like Kevin Comstock or the bass player and the drummer from the Clue?
Yeah, well, I think that Kevin was in Hotbox. He
nice.
He was a keyboard player in Hotbox. The drummer, Dana, who unfortunately passed away a couple years ago. We got him because he was the typical hairband drummer that used to stand up on his feet and twirl the sticks around, and wasn't that he was a good drummer, solid drummer.
Yeah.
But he was very showy.
So, okay. Yeah.
We wanted that whole guy behind the drums with the capabilities of being able to be a kind of a show off as well.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, and then we had the bass player. We had a switch kind of halfway through Hotbox. Darren, who was the bass player in the Clue, I think he was in Hotbox for a little bit, and then we ended up getting this other bass player. His name was Tony Centron.
Okay.
Times were definitely changing then.
Yeah, who took over the bass duties. And that kind of played out a little bit until this whole kind of hairband thing was fading out, and the whole kind of grunge thing was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also there were bands like the Minutemen and the Red Hot Chili Peppers and all these bands that were just coming up that were playing all these local clubs out here in L.A. that were a big influence to me. I used to go check them out all the time.
Right.
And they were playing exactly what I loved. I mean, they were playing all this like funk and punk, and they were doing something completely different than anyone else. So, we kind of transitioned into that whole genre of music with Live Urban Sex Drive. But before Live Urban, it was a kind of hiatus that Jared, that the band took. Jared was going through, some tough times, and he had gone through a divorce, and he and I spent a lot of time just writing music on 4-track.
Okay.
And that's when the song "Times Are Changing," came up.
I felt like that was later. For some reason, just listening to it, it sounded a little more professional, and the audio quality was better. So I felt like that was definitely a later recording.
Yeah, we did that in my bedroom. We recorded that in my bedroom, and like I said, with this 4-track recorder that we probably bounced, several times, bounced all the tracks several times so we could get some multiple tracks on there. But so our manager, Long Paul, who was managing the Hotbox, also was kind of waiting around for us to figure out what we were going to do, and stuck with us as we transitioned into Live Urban Sex Drive. But between Hotbox and Live Urban, it's like we just recorded stuff that wasn't genre specific.
Okay.
It was just like we had some stuff that was kind of funky. We had some stuff that was like Times Are Changing. We had just different, all kinds of shit that just like, it was like a melting pot of different songs.
Right.
And it was just he and I for the longest time trying to figure it out until we decided to kind of look for a couple other members. And that's when we met up with Mark, who was the bass player for Hed PE. So we hooked up with him and started kind of looking at different drummers, and it took us a while to find some drummers that kind of fit.
How long would you say that segue took? In
hiatus?
between?
It was shit. I'm thinking about it now. Man, it was probably like a year.
Wow.
That's a long. That's a lot of downtime.
Break. It was a long. Not that we stopped writing music.
Oh, of
there
course.
was a lot of shit going on personally.
No doubt.
And we were just trying to figure out.
We can all understand that.
Yeah, and that's Live Urban kind of came out of that whole thing. And once we started the ball rolling again, and we got in the studio again, and we started getting a lot of interest from different labels, and just started hitting the Sunset Circuit again, the Hollywood circuit.
Yeah, L.U.S.T. By far seems to be the one we can find the most information about.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a gentleman on YouTube who actually, he said that he was responsible for finding the videos, and 6 of the songs from L.U.S.T. are on YouTube.
Yeah, that must be Neil, who was the second guitarist that we got in the band. And we got a development deal through a guy named Brian Christian, who's a producer that worked a lot with Pink Floyd and the Babies and other bands in the 70s. Killer engineer, knew his stuff, recorded a lot of expensive studios throughout L.A., spent a lot of time in pre-production just kind of writing all the songs and perfecting everything. Then another 4 months recording all of the tracks. And this is for anybody who wants to be in a band and is looking for a deal. It's like, get your shit together at the beginning, man, and sign the contract before you start recording any tracks.
No doubt.
Because we didn't do that. We were just like excited, and we had all this interest, and
good advice.
Warner Brothers wants to hear this, and so on and so forth, and we just went for it and started recording and spending a lot of time. And when it came down to sign the deal, they approached us with the label approached us with the deal, and it was a horrible deal. It's our attorney looked at it and said, "Man, this is worse than anything Berry Gordy ever presented to any other artist over at Motown. You guys aren't ever going to make a penny, and they're going to own everything that you guys are going to write for the next, 10 years, even if you guys break up."
Wow.
So, we tried to mark it up. Our attorney marked up the contract, sent it back to them, and they said, "You guys are full of shit, man. Sign this thing, or we've got like 50 other people waiting in line."
50 other suckers.
Yeah,
okay,
so
bye.
We ended up with nothing. We ended up with none of those recordings. And the recordings on YouTube are actually the recordings that we did with Brian Christian.
Oh, okay.
We went ahead and ripped back because we had interest from some other labels with a guy named Brian LeBlum and John Trujillo from Metallica, who's the bass player from Metallica, produced the tracks for us.
Wow.
So we went back in the studio and re-recorded all those tracks and some new stuff. And everybody was just like really bummed, man, and disillusioned. And the performance really wasn't there. It just didn't sound right. And the magic was lost. And everybody was really upset because of what had happened.
Well, yeah, that could really hurt everybody's pride and everybody's
so
mood.
I took all of the masters to this other dude. I forget his name. He's another producer in L.A. that worked a lot with Nine Inch Nails and a couple other kind of industrial bands. And he and I spent a good month just remixing and laying down different guitar tracks and recording different parts. And by the time we were halfway through with it, it just didn't sound like anything we started with. So it was just like, I didn't like it. I was just like, dude, this is nothing like what I came in with.
Right.
And I don't know if there's a market with this. I'll have to say, though, that it did sound a little bit like, at the end of the day, it started sounding a little bit like Korn, and that's when, that was the time when Korn was coming up, and we actually used to rehearse in the same studios with them, so we always used to hang out and listen to them rehearse.
Wow.
And but it had that influence. And I kind of, at that time, walked away from those recordings, and that's when Jared said, "Hey, we're going to start a new band, or what do you think about starting a new band?" There was a band that we used to play a lot with. They were called Liquid Tree, and it was Wesley from Liquid Tree and Ben, the drummer from Liquid Tree. We kind of teamed up with them and started Hed PE.
Okay.
So it was Wes, Ben, myself, and Jared started kind of writing songs, and the stuff was like really super dark, and it was nothing like Hed PE's debut, release. It was just like really, really super dark, and that's when I said, "Man, I'm not having any fun anymore." This is that's when I personally did some soul searching and decided or made a decision to just basically leave the project.
Yeah.
And so it happens, and I left, and unfortunately, that was the last time that I'll say that I ever had a conversation with Jared as well.
Wow, really? You guys have not talked since then?
Dude, he just never reached out to me, and just never. That was it. It was. I was bummed. I will be honest, if we're being honest. I was a little upset.
Yeah, I mean, you guys spent years together. That's kind of mind blowing.
No, man, homeboy was in my wedding. The whole thing. It was just like it was a trip. But they moved on, and they got Chad from. I think they were still Razzle. They hadn't started Lit yet because Razzle actually kind of transformed into the band Lit.
Okay.
Yep. Steal my sunshine.
But Chad was one of the guitarists. And, he took over, my spot. And there you go. And then they got to, I guess they got to deal with Giant, and then they got to deal with Jive. So. But look, I commend them for keeping it going, and
yeah, who would have thought 20 years later they're still putting out music,
Yeah. So that's kind of the history of how everything happened. I mean, obviously there's more details than that. Some crazy shit happened along the way.
Yeah, I think we'll touch on that in the second part of the podcast here. We want to thank you.
I think our questions might draw some of that out.
Yeah.
Sure.
But we definitely want to thank you for bringing us up to speed on that. Obviously,
no, I love that story, the whole thing.
Yeah.
We learned a ton. I had no idea you guys had so many big connections or had worked with so many of these major artists.
Yeah, it was a fun time, man, and obviously there was a lot going on in music in the area, and it was kind of cool to see, even on the Strip, to see all these up and coming bands that were just getting signed. That's kind of like the thing that kept us going as well, and wanting to be where they were, you know.
Absolutely,
for sure.
But I think even though the Clue kind of faded into obscurity, it's just crazy how it just comes back now. And
yeah, 30 years later, all of a sudden there's a buzz around it again.
Yeah.
Hey, man, everything old is new.
Right.
That's
My
right.
kids love 80s music.
Right.
You know?
And I'll be the first to say that there is a massive.
Do they play your music?
They listen to it, you know. It's just look, they're my kids.
Yeah.
I have and I'm gonna date myself. My oldest is 21, or he's gonna be 21.
Oh wow, okay.
And he's actually, produces some tracks as well, and he does a lot of different things.
Nice.
But he hangs out with a talented bunch of musicians and just kids that are into creating stuff.
Chip off the old block.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, I mean they're totally into a lot of the '80s bands, and just like me, I've introduced them to every genre of music, from jazz to to classical to Spanish music. Obviously, I'm Hispanic, and
Okay.
they listen to everything.
Yeah.
And don't discriminate. So
That's awesome.
it's
That's
cool.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, man, and that's why we love the Clue so much. There's a lot of people who have kind of tagged us as making fun of it, and it's like, dude, I grew up on Michael Jackson, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I listened to the King of Pop, so I mean, my mind is wide open when it comes to music, and what at first started to seem as a joke turned into, I really like this band. And, it's just like anything. When you get into it, you're sucked in and you just want to get as much as possible.
Right. And you know what? From the beginning, when I started hearing all this stuff, I thought it was hilarious. And I'll tell you that, just honestly, as cheesy or fucked up as it is or whatever, I thought it was fucking hilarious. And because it reminded me of Spinal Tap. I'm like, fuck, man, this is my Spinal Tap moment. This is crazy.
Right. That's
and
awesome.
It was just, you can't take it too seriously. I
Right.
mean, it happened, and it was cool, and the songs weren't bad for the time. It was,
they were really good. They were really
I
good.
said this to the secretary on the way here. I was like, I hope Sergio's as excited as we are about this. And I feel like he might be, because think about that. Something you did 30 years ago all of a sudden becomes relevant again, and it has a little bit of a resurgence. It's got to be kind of a mind fuck to be like,
funny, man. I'm
this
waiting to
just
see
came out of
the reunion.
nowhere.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, we're going to wrap it up here for part 1, episode 3, Behind the Cluesic of The Big Deal. We're at Shotgun Love Studios in Southfield. Always want to remember, if you haven't seen the first or second podcast, get over to our YouTube channel, our Facebook.com/playtheclue. Check it out. Vicious put down an original track, Clued.
If you haven't seen Clued yet, I don't know what you're doing with your life. It's kind of the evolution of music, now with how electronic music is such a big deal. He turned old Clue music with little snippets and everything into
that's awesome, man. Shit.
Yeah, and obviously check us out on all social media. We're not very active on Twitter, but we're there.
Yeah, at Play the Clue. Mainly our Facebook.com/playtheclue. We're always posting. I'm the Secretary.
This is the Clue Missioner.
And I'm Sergio. I'm Danny Axe.
Danny Axe.
Yeah.
I love it. We want to thank you so much, Sergio, for taking the time to be on with us. It's been enlightening. It's been our pleasure, and it's been a long time coming. Clunatics,
hold on tight. Within a couple of weeks, we're going to have part 2 of episode 3 of The Big Deal, Behind the Cluesic, with Sergio Cardenas answering the tough questions that you want to know. Yeah, buddy, we did it! Woo! Finally!
That was a clue, everybody.